In 1974, he was television's golden boy. Then, Fonzie happened. What followed was a brutal power struggle that would change TV forever. Storylines stolen, dignity stripped away, and a friendship pushed to the breaking point. Now, Henry Winkler reveals the devastating truth about why Happy Days' original star walked away, and the price everyone paid for fame. Henry Winkler was born on October 30th, 1945, in Manhattan, New York City. His parents, Ilse and Harry Winkler, were German Jews who had escaped Nazi Germany just a few years before. They settled on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Henry's father became successful in the lumber business, so the family was financially secure. But life at home was hard. His parents, shaped by their struggles in Germany, were strict and often harsh. They even called Henry a dumb dog in German, a nickname that hurt him deeply and stuck with him for years. Henry had a tough time in school. He struggled with reading and writing, but back then, no one knew about dyslexia. His teachers and parents thought he was lazy or just not trying hard enough. This made him feel frustrated and alone. But when he was 13, something amazing happened. He watched the movie West Side Story, and it lit a spark in him. He fell in love with acting and started to dream of a different kind of life. His bar mitzvah at 13 was another big moment. Even though reading Hebrew was incredibly hard for him, he memorized everything and did a great job. For the first time, he felt proud of himself. This gave him a little bit of confidence, even though school stayed difficult. As a teenager, he found comfort in music by Bob Dylan and the Beatles. He also discovered photography, which gave him a creative outlet and a way to express himself. In 1963, when he was 18, Henry made a bold choice. He wanted to act, even though his parents didn't support his dream. He applied to Emerson College in Boston and got in. Moving away from New York gave him a fresh start. College was still hard because of his reading struggles, but he worked through it. His theater professors encouraged him, and for the first time, he felt like he belonged somewhere. After graduating in 1967, Henry decided to go even further. He applied to Yale's School of Drama, one of the best acting schools in the world. The application process was tough, but he impressed them with his charm and talent. He got accepted and started studying there later that year. Yale was a whole new challenge. Acting was exciting, but learning scripts and reading tough plays was a nightmare because of his dyslexia. Henry had to find creative ways to memorize lines. He worked extra hard and leaned on his natural talent to pull through. He acted in big productions like Peer Gynt and A Midsummer Night's Dream, and by the time he graduated in 1970, he was ready to take on the world. But life after Yale wasn't easy. Henry moved back to New York and struggled to find acting jobs. He took whatever he could get, including commercials. In 1 year, he appeared in 42 different ads, which helped him pay the bills and gain confidence. He also acted in small theater productions, including a role in 40 Carats on Broadway, which got him noticed. In 1973, Henry landed a small part in the movie The Lords of Flatbush. It was a low-budget film, but it gave him his first taste of being on a movie set. Around the same time, he also appeared on a few TV shows in minor roles. These experiences gave him just enough momentum to catch the attention of casting agents in Hollywood. Later that year, Henry got a call about a new TV show called Happy Days. It was set in the 1950s and focused on a family in Milwaukee. At first, he auditioned for a smaller role, but the producers asked him to try out for a character called Arthur the Fonzarelli. That moment changed everything for Henry. When Happy Days started on January 15, 1974, Fonzie, played by Henry Winkler, was not supposed to be a big deal. The character, Arthur Fonzarelli, was just meant to be a tough guy from the neighborhood to balance out Richie Cunningham, the show's good-natured main character. Fonzie barely appeared in the first season, showing up in only 16 of the 24 episodes, and often for just a few moments. He was written as a high school dropout who had been abandoned by his father at the age of 3 and raised by his grandmother. This gave him a rough edge, but he wasn't meant to take center stage. Henry Winkler wasn't the first pick for the role. Producers initially thought about casting Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees, but when Winkler auditioned, he impressed everyone by improvising a now-famous mirror scene. At the time, Winkler was 28, unknown, and eager to prove himself. He got the part and started bringing something special to the character that no one expected. At first, the show kept Fonzie's tough guy image intact, but small moments hinted at his softer side. One episode, Guess Who's Coming to Christmas, showed Fonzie spending the holidays with the Cunninghams because he was lonely. Viewers loved this mix of toughness and vulnerability, and it started to shift how the show used his character. Not everyone at ABC liked Fonzie at first. Executives worried that his greaser image might make him seem like a bad influence. They even banned him from wearing a leather jacket unless he was near his motorcycle. Because of this rule, Fonzie often wore a green windbreaker that just didn't fit his style. To work around the rule, the writers made sure Fonzie's motorcycle was in as many scenes as possible, even when it made no sense. Over time, Fonzie became so popular that ABC relaxed the rules, and by the second season, the leather jacket became a permanent part of his look. As Fonzie's popularity grew, he started taking over the show. His catchphrases like "aye" and "sit on it" became part of everyday speech. People loved how he could fix anything with a simple tap, like hitting a jukebox to make it play. Kids looked up to him, and adults found him charming. By the second season, Fonzie wasn't just a side character anymore. He was a star. Fonzie's fame went beyond the show. His face was everywhere, on lunchboxes, posters, and toys. By 1976, Fonzie merchandise was earning millions of dollars. Even in places like Japan, Fonzie was a big deal. In fact, a poll in 1977 named him more popular than the Emperor of Japan. Politicians even tried to associate themselves with him, hoping to win over voters. Henry Winkler, who played Fonzie, became one of the most recognized actors in America. But all this attention caused problems. On set, the show started to revolve more and more around Fonzie, which upset Ron Howard, who played Richie. Howard had been the main character, but as Fonzie grew more popular, Richie's role felt smaller. Howard later admitted that it was frustrating, though he never blamed Winkler for it. At one point, ABC wanted to rename the show Fonzie's Happy Days. This idea upset everyone. Winkler himself stood up to the network and said it would be unfair to the rest of the cast. Ron Howard threatened to leave the show if the name was changed. Creator Gary Marshall sided with the cast and refused to let the network make the change. In the end, they compromised by giving Winkler equal billing in the opening credits. Despite the tension, the cast worked hard to keep the show fun and supportive. Winkler even shared the spotlight when he won a Golden Globe for his role, insisting that the whole cast come up on stage with him. The decision to keep Happy Days as an ensemble show paid off. It ran for 11 seasons and became one of the most loved sitcoms in TV history. After Happy Days ended in 1984, Henry Winkler's life took a difficult turn. For 11 seasons, he played Fonzie, the cool, confident guy everyone loved. The character was so famous that people around the world recognized him. But being so famous as Fonzie became a big problem for Winkler. Casting directors couldn't see him as anyone else. In his words, "I couldn't get hired for 8 or 9 years because I was the Fonz." But Winkler didn't give up. He decided to try new things. In 1988, he directed his first movie, Memories of Me. It didn't become a huge hit, but it was a big step for him. He also started producing. By taking control of projects, he slowly built a new part of his career. In 1993, he directed another movie, Cop and a Half, with Burt Reynolds. These projects helped him move away from being just the Fonz. One choice Winkler still regrets was turning down the role of Danny Zuko in Grease. The movie was offered to him in 1977 while he was still playing Fonzie. The character, Danny, was a lot like Fonzie, a leather jacket-wearing cool guy from the 1950s. Winkler said no because he didn't want to play the same type of role again. John Travolta ended up taking the part, and Grease became a massive success. Winkler later joked, "I went home and had orange juice." Travolta went home and bought a plane. Even though he regretted the decision, Winkler admitted Travolta was perfect for the role. A big turning point came when Winkler co-created the TV show MacGyver. The show, about a secret agent who could solve problems with everyday objects, became a huge hit and ran for 7 seasons. It also made Winkler financially secure. Producing gave him a new way to succeed in Hollywood and helped him prove he was more than just an actor. Years later, Winkler returned to acting and found a whole new audience. In 2003, he played Barry Zuckerkorn, a terrible but funny lawyer, on the show Arrested Development. The role was completely different from Fonzie, and people loved seeing him in a new light. One joke on the show even poked fun at the famous Happy Days shark jumping scene. Winkler didn't mind laughing at himself, which made people like him even more. In 2018, Winkler's acting career hit a new high with the HBO show Barry. He played Gene Cousineau, an acting teacher helping a hitman trying to change his life. The role was emotional, funny, and deeply layered. At 72 years old, Winkler won his first Emmy Award for his performance. It came 42 years after his first Emmy nomination for Happy Days, proving it's never too late to reach new heights. Henry Winkler's life changed when he found out he had dyslexia at 31. It was May 7, 1977. This moment helped him understand why school had always been so hard. Winkler realized the truth when he and his wife Stacy took her son Jed to see a specialist. Jed was struggling in school, and the doctor described symptoms that felt very familiar to Winkler. For the first time, he realized his own reading and writing difficulties weren't because he was lazy or stupid. His brain just worked differently. This discovery was a mix of emotions for Winkler. He felt relieved because now he knew what had been wrong all along. But he also felt angry. He remembered being called names and misunderstood for years. He said, "I felt relief and rage. Relief because there was a name for it, and rage because I had been treated so unfairly." His school years had been tough. At McBurney School in New York City, he had terrible grades, a GPA of 2.2, and was ranked in the bottom 3% of his class. People assumed he wasn't trying hard, but the truth was no one understood his learning problems. After his diagnosis, Winkler began talking about dyslexia and became an advocate for early testing. He believed if he had been diagnosed as a child, school would have been a completely different experience. He even said he could have avoided thousands of hours of struggling and feeling bad about himself. But instead of letting it hold him back, Winkler found ways to adapt. In his acting career, he came up with creative ways to memorize lines by listening and repeating them out loud. This method helped him succeed, even though reading scripts was hard for him. Dyslexia affects many people, and Winkler's story shows how important it is to raise awareness. Studies suggest that around 20% of people might have dyslexia, but many are never diagnosed. Winkler started sharing his story with students, visiting schools, and encouraging kids not to give up. By 2025, he had spoken to over 250,000 students about facing challenges and finding their own strengths. Another big part of Winkler's life is his marriage to Stacy Weitzman. They met on August 23, 1976, in a Los Angeles clothing store where Stacy worked. Winkler came in to buy a sport coat, but left with Stacy's phone number. He said he knew right away she was the one. 2 weeks later, they went on their first date to see a movie, and their connection only grew stronger. Stacy had a young son, Jed, from her previous marriage, and Winkler happily became his stepfather. They got married on May 5, 1978, in a small, private ceremony with just 30 guests. Their family grew when they had 2 more children. Zoe was born on September 30, 1980, and Max was born on August 18, 1983. Raising a blended family wasn't always easy, but Winkler and Stacy worked as a team. They faced challenges together, including Jed's diagnosis of dyslexia, which led to Winkler's own discovery of his learning disability. Instead of letting it overwhelm them, they became strong advocates for helping kids with dyslexia. The Winklers created a warm and loving home. Their house was always open to friends and family, and it became a gathering place for many young actors in Hollywood. They made family time a priority, setting rules like no work on weekends so they could focus on being together. They started Sunday dinners, a tradition that still continues, now including their grandchildren. Their marriage has lasted more than 47 years, which is rare in Hollywood. They have faced hard times together, like Stacy's battle with breast cancer in 2001, but their bond has only grown stronger. In 2023, they celebrated their 45th wedding anniversary by renewing their vows in a small ceremony at home. Their love and commitment are an inspiration to many. Winkler's struggles with dyslexia also led him to an unexpected new career as a children's book author. In 2003, his agent suggested he write a book about his experiences. At first, Winkler thought it was impossible. He joked, "I'm dyslexic, how can I write a book?" But he realized his story could help kids like him. He teamed up with Lynn Oliver, an experienced author, and together they created Hank Zipser, a character based on Winkler's life. The first book, Niagara Falls, or Does It?, came out on May 14, 2003. It was a huge hit, selling over 150,000 copies in its first year. The series grew to 17 books, all about Hank, a boy with dyslexia, and his adventures in school and life. Winkler dictated the stories while Oliver wrote them down, making sure they were funny, relatable, and easy for kids to read. The Hank Zipser books have been used in schools around the world to help children understand dyslexia. Winkler also started a new series in 2014 called Here's Hank, designed for younger readers. These books use a special font to make reading easier for kids with learning differences. Winkler visited schools to talk about his books and his journey, inspiring kids to believe in themselves. Henry Winkler started writing his memoir, Being Henry, The Fonz, and Beyond, on October 15, 2022, when he was 77. He worked with co-author James Kaplan to tell his story. Writing the book was hard for Winkler because of his dyslexia, which he was diagnosed with at 31. He couldn't write things down easily, so he spent hours dictating his memories to Kaplan. They worked for 8 months, often late into the night. Over 256 pages, Winkler revisited his past, including painful childhood memories and the challenges of his career. It was a long process that forced him to confront moments he hadn't thought about for years. One surprising thing Winkler discovered was how much he had forgotten about Happy Days. He remembered a moment during the 3rd season when producers thought about renaming the show Fonzie's Happy Days. Winkler had always seen himself as part of the team, so this realization shocked him. He also talked about how hard the show was on him. Some days, he worked for 15 hours and filmed up to 25 scenes. This left him little time for his family. Winkler admitted that he missed many important moments in his children's lives because of his work. The book also revealed what happened behind the scenes of Happy Days. Winkler's relationship with Anson Williams, who played Potsy, wasn't good. In 1978, Williams accused Winkler of stealing a comedic moment during a live taping. They didn't speak off camera for nearly 2 decades, finally making up during a cast reunion in 1999. Winkler's relationship with Tom Bosley, who played Howard Cunningham, was also tense. In 1977, Bosley accused Winkler of overshadowing the rest of the cast because of Fonzie's popularity. This led to a strained relationship for the rest of the show. Winkler also shared how Erin Moran, who played Joni, struggled with substance abuse. He recalled a day in 1982 when she showed up to set intoxicated, causing delays. When Scott Baio joined as Chachi, Winkler felt threatened, worried that Baio would steal the spotlight. This led to competition between the two. Winkler also remembered a moment with Donnie Most, who played Ralph Malph, in 1980. Most admitted he felt left out because his character wasn't getting enough attention. Winkler worked to get better storylines for him after that. Guest stars on the show brought their own stories. Robin Williams auditioned for the role of Mork on October 19, 1977. Winkler remembered how Williams stunned everyone in the room with his improvised alien language. Winkler knew immediately that Williams was special and told the producer, Gary Marshall, to cast him. Williams became a close friend, and Winkler reassured him during a personal moment when Williams feared his career might not last. Winkler also talked about meeting a nervous Harrison Ford during Ford's early acting days. Ford later thanked Winkler in a handwritten note after becoming a star. Ron Howard's time on Happy Days showed that even success could have a difficult side. He joined the show as the lead character, Richie Cunningham, when it began on January 15, 1974. But as the show became more popular, the character Fonzie, played by Henry Winkler, turned into a cultural icon. This changed everything for Howard. By the mid-1970s, Fonzie's popularity overshadowed Howard's character, and he started feeling disrespected by the network executives. He explained this in an interview on The Graham Norton Show in 2021, saying that while Richie was the original lead, the focus shifted to Fonzie. Promotions and events became all about Fonzie, and Howard noticed that studio and network heads began treating him poorly, both in business matters and personally. The impact of this treatment was clear in the show itself. By the 1976 to 1977 season, Richie's role was being reduced in favor of Fonzie-centered stories. An example was the episode Fonzie's Old Lady, which aired on February 1, 1977, where Richie had only a minor role while the story focused entirely on Fonzie. Things got worse in 1978, when ABC executives suggested renaming the show to Fonzie's Happy Days. This idea came up during a network meeting in July, and Howard, who was only 24 years old, was deeply hurt. He even considered leaving the show. However, Henry Winkler strongly opposed the name change, and the idea was dropped. The media didn't make things easier. Reporters often brought up Howard's diminished role, asking how it felt to become second class on his own show. These constant reminders added to his frustration. Despite this, Howard stayed professional and continued to give strong performances. For example, in the episode Richie Almost Dies, which aired in 1978, his acting was praised for its emotional depth. Still, the strain of feeling undervalued pushed him to think about leaving. Finally, after the 1979 to 1980 season, he decided to leave Happy Days as a regular cast member. His last episode, Passages Part 2, aired on May 6, 1980. This decision marked a turning point for Howard. While leaving the show was hard, it allowed him to pursue his dream of directing. He had already started directing with Grand Theft Auto in 1977, but now he could fully focus on building a new career. Howard's departure surprised many, including Henry Winkler. The two had formed a strong bond while working together, and the news of Howard leaving was difficult for Winkler. The day before Howard's final episode aired, He called Winkler personally to break the news. Winkler later said in an interview that he was stunned, but understood Howard's reasons. Their friendship continued beyond Happy Days. When Howard directed Night Shift in 1982, Winkler visited the set to show his support. Over the years, Winkler often praised Howard in interviews, calling his success as a director no surprise to anyone who had worked with him. Henry Winkler and Ron Howard had a special moment at the 2024 Emmy Awards. It marked 50 years since their show Happy Days first aired. The event was held in Los Angeles, where they recreated the famous set of Arnold's Drive-In from the show. Everything looked like it did back then: sports pennants, a jukebox, and even the red booths. When Winkler, now 78, and Howard, 70, walked on stage, the crowd went wild. It was like seeing old friends come back together after decades. Howard said, "This is fantastic," and Winkler replied, "Feels like home." There was a funny moment too. The Happy Days theme song didn't play when they came on stage. Howard joked that other shows got their theme songs, and Winkler, staying in character as Fonzie, pretended to hit the jukebox. As soon as he did, the song started playing, and the crowd gave them a standing ovation. It was a perfect mix of humor and nostalgia. The night wasn't just about memories. Winkler talked about Howard's recent success. Howard had won an Emmy for his Disney Plus documentary about Jim Henson, the creator of Sesame Street. The documentary had already won several other awards earlier that week. Winkler called Howard his very good friend for 50 years and showed how proud he was of him. A lot of effort went into making this reunion special. Winkler and Howard rehearsed their lines and timing carefully. The costumes matched their characters, Fonzie and Richie, perfectly. The production team even found a motorcycle like the one Fonzie used to ride. It was clear they wanted everything to feel just right. And it paid off. The reunion had a huge impact. Fans posted about it all over social media, and Happy Days started trending worldwide. Many people went back to watch the old episodes, and streaming platforms saw a massive increase in viewership. There were even rumors about a possible reboot of the show, with Winkler and Howard involved as producers. Their connection wasn't just about acting together. Winkler and Howard had what Winkler called thunderbolt chemistry. From the moment they met on the set of Happy Days in 1974, they clicked. Winkler was 27, and Howard was only 18, but their bond was instant. Winkler shared a story about how they could rehearse and film a 3-page scene in just 20 minutes. It wasn't just skill. It was like they understood each other perfectly. One story stood out from the 3rd season of the show. In a serious scene, Fonzie had to confront Richie about something personal. They nailed the scene in one take. The director was so impressed, he said, "We're not doing another take. You can't improve on perfection." Moments like these showed how strong their connection was. Even after the show ended, their friendship stayed strong. Howard helped Winkler during a tough time when he struggled to find new roles. In 1985, Howard invited him to the set of his movie, Cocoon. That visit reminded Winkler why he loved acting and gave him the push he needed to try different roles. Winkler also became the godfather to Howard's daughter, Bryce Dallas Howard. He was there for her big moments, like her first school play and later her breakout role in The Village. Bryce said Winkler was like a mentor, always giving her advice and cheering her on. When she got married, Winkler walked her down the aisle with Ron Howard, showing how much he meant to their family. Their friendship inspired many people in Hollywood. In fact, a university even started a course about how to build lasting creative partnerships, using their relationship as an example. Winkler summed it up best when he said, "What Ron and I have is rare." It's not just about being co-stars or even friends. It's a connection that defies time, and I'm grateful for it every day.